Good morning. This is Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by Manchester United legend Paul Parker to talk over a very eventful week at Manchester United and to preview another very eventful week at United. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to get your questions and comments in. And if you're watching if you're watching the replay, feel free to say hello and comment. We do reply to the comments we get. If you're listening back on the audio podcast, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review on the platform you're listening to as well. Paul, how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you, Wayne.
Good, good. A lot to get through today. Before I start, a huge thank you to Paul and to everyone who's been so supportive of the release of Eternal this week. It's been really mad to see the reception for it, and I hope that once people have started reading it, as opposed to just receiving it, the reception's still as positive. But really appreciate all the nice comments. And the shares and everything like that. I know when someone's promoting something, it takes a lot of patience from people who are sort of with them. So everyone who's been patient while I've been doing that, really appreciative of it. So yeah, thank you, and look forward to hearing what everyone thinks when they've read it. Paul, I don't even know where to begin. I feel like when we do a podcast, you should do the last game, or start with the last game. But I feel like we need to start with Barcelona and what happened at the new camp because, all right, it was a sort of like a cagey first half a little bit, but United still approached it with positivity, which was really surprising, and I guess not surprising in one respect because Ten Hag has done that, but to see United go and take the game to a really good, well, an improving Barcelona side who were, obviously they're in a transitional period themselves, but they're leading La Liga by a bunch of points, so they're doing quite well. And to see United go there and really dominating patches in the first half was surprising, but then Barcelona come out, take the lead in the second half, and in United, a huge test of character, and they responded magnificently to come back and take the lead, and really should have made it 3-1 or maybe not 4-1. That would have been dreamland, but certainly probably deserved a third before letting in the equaliser. I said online that United dominated parts of that game. People were saying, "Oh, what are you talking about? It was, an evenly matched game." I mean, all right, maybe it was, can't argue with the draw, and I'm not arguing with the draw, but I felt to watch United play positively there and go there in the right spirit and look at points like they were going to really run away with that game was a huge testament to where the club are at the moment. Did you see it the same way as me? Did you see it differently? Do you think that we got away with it? How did you? What did you make of the 2-2 draw?
No, they definitely didn't get away with it. I believe that a draw was a fair result in the end. When you look at certain bits, yes, United did dominate a bit, but then you have to look at the start of the game. You could see Barcelona; they actually were looking like Barcelona,
Yeah,
as we knew Barcelona without the little Argentinian playing. There was always that little bit, especially with Xavi in charge of the team. But I thought a draw was a fair result when you look at what United created, but you looked at the saves that David De Gea made as well, especially the one late on as well. It could have been different. 12 months earlier, or 24 months earlier, United fans would have been jumping, everyone be jumping around because of two away goals.
yeah,
That's how you can look at it, but now you can't. You look at it now and you just know it's the biggest show in town on Thursday. This game is going to be talked about more than what happens on Wednesday night in the Champions League. To be perfectly honest, there's no bigger game on
yeah,
this week than that game on Thursday night, especially as where it is at the moment. You know, two of the biggest clubs in the world who have both been through challenging times and still going through challenging times, I should say as well. So for me, it was great to watch. It's just a shame, really, that one's going to go because if you're UEFA for that Europa League, you'd want those two in the final. To be
yeah.
perfect, and it's just to sell that UEFA. And to be honest, when you look at the teams that are in that Europa League, all of a sudden you're starting to see it now. It's where before people talk down to it, you have to say it's a decent competition because of the teams that are competing in it now as well. So it definitely is a competition to win, and one that you should be held in high regard for winning it. It's like the old UEFA Cup, isn't it? They always used to say that was the most difficult tournament, very difficult. Liverpool struggled to win that one on a regular basis. So and that was when they was in their prime. So it's been dismissed by some big name managers, but as you know, they're all saying is a trophy's a trophy. But to get to the final of this one for Ten Hag, and obviously he's in the final at the weekend as well, would be an incredible achievement from where Manchester United were 12 months ago.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is that sort of the thing that you got to keep coming back to is that 12 months ago, where we were, 12 months ago, 10 months ago, 10 months ago, we were losing 4-0 to Brighton. And yeah, all right, we lost to Brentford 8 months ago, you know what I mean, by the same score, and the sort of leaps and bounds that we've come on. It's enough to say that, when you see a team progress and you see them moving forward and sort of develop a new identity, you think, all right, there'll be sort of stumbles along the way, Paul. But I mean, I think the thing that really caught most people off guard with the Barcelona from both teams really was how high quality it was. Like you can see an entertaining game of teams, they're moving on and they're trying to build, but you'll see generally entertainment, but then there'll be sort of drawbacks where you can see that those teams need to improve. You can say, all right, well, they did all right, but they need to improve this. And we knew that anyway, but that's the kind of mistake that you expect a team like this to be making. But we didn't see that on Thursday. We saw two high-quality games, like you said. Now, everyone's looking at this game, and they probably were anyway, because it's the high-profile tie of the round. But because of the quality of the game on last Thursday, it's a serious barometer of teams' ability. United and Barcelona's ability at the moment, isn't it? I mean, the tie wouldn't look out of it would be the tie of the round in the Champions League as well.
Yeah, 100%. I'm sure there's a little bit of bitterness going on there with a lot of teams who are thinking, looking at this game and thinking that everyone is set on this game, and it is. I think that's what football. You've earned the right for it. Both these clubs have earned the right to be the talk of the town, and I'm just gutted that I'm not going to be there. I've been around and watched big games, since I left Champions League games, and being up in Manchester on a Champions League day, and I mean being up there for the day,
Yeah.
from say midday onwards, is an incredible experience. The way the town buzzes,
Yeah.
and then cocking it up by leaving too late from the town to get to the stadium, and all you're doing is bang your head against the car window or taxi window because you're sitting in traffic. It's an absolute nightmare, but it is a great experience to actually be around on a Champions League day, or should say a European day in Manchester. So I'm just looking at it, and I really just it's so difficult to think which way this game's going to go. But I just think every time after watching the game yesterday, and then thinking you got Casemiro's going to be back, and you just think that's where there's going to make a big difference. That's where it's going to be. That makes Fred shifts on another gear when he plays with Casemiro.
Yeah.
Fred gets better when he's playing with him as well. The team functions better when he's there as well. They'll be better defensively because the left-sided centre half comes back in, and we've seen already that when he comes onto the field, how the difference he makes it in the defensive line. And that's on how the ball is shifted from the back into midfield or beyond when he's playing. There's more zest, as what we saw of that game against Leeds at Ellen Road, when it was just like running. It was like you just felt like from the back line they were playing in the quagmire because the ball wasn't moving.
Yeah.
As soon as he come on, all of a sudden everything shifted. United stepped forward 5, 6, 10 yards, so there was in a more attacking position as well. So he has made a massive impact, not just on his defending, which is near on perfect when you talk about tackles won, but just to the fact of what he does when he's won that tackle and how he can actually transform defence straight away, going into it, progressing to an attacking position. So he has made a big difference. So United are in a really, really good place, and at the end of it, you have to just look at it. Everything this moment in time is a bonus for every United fan. It has to be treated as a bonus because no one expected this. I sat around, I was saying it, everybody was saying it, for United to be considered to win a league title, or the next man, whoever the manager is going to take them 3, 4, 5 years. He's come in, and already everyone. I mean, I'm saying it that if he's given what he wants in the summer to maybe go and maybe bring in 3 players, and I'm just saying 3, not being greedy. I think
Yeah,
3 because you don't want too many because that causes issues about make it. Then all of a sudden you're having to make too many changes because you feel you have to because you've got too many bodies about, as what Chelsea are finding. You're suddenly looking at it going after this season. You're suddenly thinking you're looking at next season, thinking, so hold on a minute. Football's going through a little bit of a stage at the moment where no one's really jumping down there. Even City, Liverpool, they're all fine. So next season would be an interesting one, but it all depends on how we finish to get that kind of buzz, that kind of can't wait for the season to get going again, and then what he can do, what he's allowed to do in the summer, and it'd be absolutely ridiculous if they're not already talking because they're talking about what they can do in the summer
yeah,
for him to get what he wants. Because if you can organise anything, it's going to be now, and you've got to think yourself if you're going positive, speculating to accumulate. You think about if you get Manchester United, you get them the right signing, and straight away from day one they're looking like a side that could win the league. You think how much commercially that would make to the club for
yeah.
every aspect, everything within the club to go and sell out there to people. It would make such a difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I do feel, without wanting to get carried away, that we've seen United flirt with second place in the last sort of 10 years, but nothing has felt as sustainable as this. Nothing feels as real as this. It's just remarkable to see the difference, and yeah, you're absolutely right, especially the manager's judgment on effectively every player that he's brought in, even Weghorst and Sabitzer, which we'll get to in a moment. And loads of comments. I'm just going to get to them quickly before we move on to the next point. Robbie says, "Morning, Wayne and Paul. Hope you like the shout out Paul to appear on Tom McDermott's podcast." We know Tom very well. Tom's a good lad. So yeah, I'm sure Paul will do that if he needs to. Feeling great about United at the moment. Ten Hag has done a Lazarus on this team in 7 months. Absolutely. Ben says, "Missed the beginning." Hello both. Morning, Ben. Hope you're all right. You're right, Paul. This summer could be a big opportunity. T2 that Izzo says Sabitzer was very tidy on the ball yesterday. We'll talk about Leicester in a moment as well. I'd like to see him and Casemiro play together. I feel they're closer to Casemiro and Eriksen than I guess the other combinations that we've got. Absolutely, I think Sabitzer's been a very smart signing, and already I think Bayern said something like £18 million they wanted for him. I think that'd be smart investment from United to get him for just a squad option. I think he's fantastic. So go to lot says Paul Parker looks like he could play for United today, and I've seen him in the flesh, and I can tell you, I do confirm that he's just as sprightly as in his playing days, even if he doesn't feel it, and he might argue with me, but he's definitely just as sprightly. Yeah, Barcelona then, just to close on this, Paul, the second leg, like you said, it's kind of like a bonus, but like in terms of what we were expecting from it, but having drawn 2-2 with them, having played as well as we did on Thursday, you kind of, not saying expecting, but you want United to go out there and put on a show again, don't you?
You do, but it's. I just think the whole thing about it being Barcelona, it will be like the game will be like a party.
Yeah,
People will just be enjoying the moment of of that game and playing Barcelona and the position they're in. And I really can't see anything else other than really United winning. And and yourself, Wayne, and the time we've been doing this, it's not often that I come and say something like it because I'll be holding back somewhere. There'll be a choke hold on me somewhere going full on. So hopefully, if this doesn't kill it, but I really just for the fact of when I look at where United are, it hasn't been like this in my opinion, for a long, long time, where you can actually feel or know that you know that they're going to win. And when I've been over the last lot of years when I do my prediction thing for the for the local pub down the roads and to put the teams in. Over the years, I've been looking at certain games, and every time I'm going, I can't see United winning that. Where before I would have put my heart in my sleeve and gone with United every game, but there was times when I just couldn't see it happening, and it wasn't because they're playing good teams. It's just where the club was and where certain players were who weren't
Yeah,
understanding the expectations of where they are. So I just think now these players have grabbed hold of it, especially when you bring in the right players who show the right application when they turn up for everyone else who's been there over the recent years to see and suddenly think to themselves, hold on a minute here, this could be embarrassing. And majority of them have grabbed it. They've grabbed it and understood it that they're going to be left behind if they don't start sizing themselves up against the new ones who have come in. So they have stepped on. Players have improved. Players are showing more willingness. Players want to learn. Players
yeah,
have learned. Luke Shaw has learned,
yeah,
definitely learned, but he can't just go around and run when he wants to run and giving away fouls because he doesn't want to run. He's working harder over a longer period of time. Where before it's a little burst. Oh, I've done enough now. I'll just coast through. Wan-Bissaka's another one. Dallo, to a point, has 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 done that without a doubt. So we've seen the strength of the back line improve. We've seen the midfield improve. It's just that little bit more consistency in the front three because you don't survive as a team. You don't really achieve if you're relying on one person to keep scoring goals.
yeah,
It doesn't really work. You don't win league titles with one man as your goal scorer normally. To be
yeah.
fair, it's you have to be better than that.
Yeah, and the one thing I would say is that obviously Vegos has found it difficult to settle in and score goals, but he is bringing something to United to play this number 10 role that Ten Hag has put him in. Is one thing, and
Yeah,
Sancho, either side of his absence from the team, picking up goals, and maybe if he's a consistent supply of goals, then that's one thing. But Garnacho's playing well, Sancho's playing well, and Anthony hit and miss, but they're playing well and they're contributing in that regard. And you hope that once there is a settled kind of system there, that the three players that are being picked are constantly reliable to be picked, that you'll see that supply of goals. And I just keep coming back to, everyone's talking about, progressing in the Europa League and the fixture list and everything like that. And I'm not saying it's a free hit on Thursday. It's definitely not. Um, no game is like that for United, really, unless it's a dead rubber. But win, lose, or draw, there's going to be something to take from this. And I always remember the is it 1999 semi-final replay when they collared Fergie after the game and they said, extra time is not what you needed in a replay. When the fixture list is this packed, and he said, "Don't care about that. Our fans will be talking about this for years." The momentum and the atmosphere that you get from a performance like that and a win like that. And it was kind of like that in 93, 94, where we went all the way in every domestic competition. We were just playing fantastic football all the time. And it feels, I'm not saying like exactly like that now, but the feeling, the football isn't the same, but the feeling is kind of similar that, you want to be in the games where they're playing well and they're competing because, like, we don't want to keep harking back to misery. But that's what it's been like the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And so to now see us playing well and be in these games, it's a buzz. It's a buzz. Why do you not want to see United competing like this? And yeah, so that's
yeah.
how
On
I
that
see it.
on that note, Wayne, just quickly, why you're on that note is that I really don't understand some of these managers. The moment they lose a game or anything doesn't go the way they want it to go, they start moaning about fixture congestion.
Yeah,
And it's always the top managers who moan, never the ones who are having a tough time as such, because they just know they've just got to get on with it. Teams in the lower division who start off the season with more games anyway,
yeah,
and they've got their little cups down there, so they play a lot more. But I look at it and I think you can, the only way you get fixture congestion if you're being successful.
yeah,
So why do managers keep moaning about when the likes of Arteta, Klopp,
yeah,
Klopp is every time when it's not going his way, it's playing games, and so when you're playing over 50 games, there's always going to be congestion because you can only organise so much space to pick game. But if you're successful, you've got to fit in between. So I don't understand managers at the moment. We've got the biggest issue now. We've got it's like talking to it's like being a parent sometimes, and your kid says to you, "Oh, my nose is running. I don't feel well." And you say, "Well, I'll tell you what. You go to school, and if you don't feel really well that given time, I will come and get you." Once they get in school with their mates, they forget about their runny nose. But every time we keep putting into, everyone wants to put into players' heads that they're tired. Even fans talk about, oh, we need to rest them because they've got an extra day that we need to rest them. Resting doesn't do a lot. It might do a lot if you've got 11 players, might do something for two or three, but you might end up with some players who are like Rolls Royces or even sports cars who need their engine ticking over, who
Yeah.
need to play, And oh, he's tired. He's not 100% fit. The man who works on the conveyor belt in a factory, he's never 100% fit, but he
Yeah.
still goes to work and does a good job. So this whole thing, really does get on my nerves, grates me when people keep talking about, oh, it's tired, they need a rest. You play games, and if you're Manchester United and you're a player, you should want to play in every game because while you're in this position here, the adulation you are getting from people and people are talking about you, they absolutely love it. Ten Hag hasn't moaned about fixture congestion because he's happy to be in that position because it means he's done better than what he believed he was going to do. He never thought he was going to be in the final already. He never thought about this run in Europe. He never believed that he was going to be sitting in a position and so close to winning that league because most when in the back of his mind, he was just thinking about top four, got to get close to that top four. Now he's talking about, in his mind, he's mostly going, I've got a great opportunity of cementing a place in the Champions League earlier than maybe anyone's ever done it before. Earlier than, say, as early as when the last person, maybe Sir Alex, would have done it.
Yeah.
But other than that, really, it really does grate me when I keep hearing about people about physical and got to do this, got to rest that. There's bits you do which is per normal, and he's been able to do it because of Luke Shaw can play inside as left centre half, and little bits in there he can do. But the likes of Casemiro, as we've seen, you need him involved. He wants to be involved in every game, and
Yeah.
the team needs him there, in there because I think the games have been right for United, have done well, but maybe if it had a little bit been more high caliber games, it might have been different without Casemiro.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and we definitely got through them as opposed to in the midfield sense, we got through them
Yeah,
rather than found a solution. I would say.
yeah,
Ben says, "I can imagine that when you're in form, you don't want to miss a single minute." Absolutely, and we'll be coming on to the League Cup final, obviously. But he says, "Put it this way, I'm not sure I've cared about the Carabao Cup as much as when we won it in 2006 to kick off that team's era of success. Was it the Carling Cup then?" It's been under some different guises over the time. I'll try and list them all. I'll try and list them all in a bit. Um, Talking about squad rotation, Paul, we came as close as what it's going to be yesterday to resting players because of the fact that we were so dominant in that early period of the second half. I mean, don't get me wrong. I thought the first half a bit dicey. Sometimes, they had some chances. De Gea called upon to make at least one great save. Having said that, we did create a couple of chances ourselves. We had that kind of pattern where you couldn't dominate the ball in the middle of the pitch as much as we tried to sort of get a handle on it with Sabitzer in there and Fred doing the work and Fernandez doing. I thought Fernandez played excellently on the right. His pass to Rashford. We've I'm probably more guilty of this than you, Paul, in decrying Fernandez's wastefulness sometimes with passes, but you accommodate him in the team because of the things that he can do, like what he did for Rashford's goal yesterday. The first assist was magnificent, the way that he just clips it with the outside of his foot. Rashford is free, scores the goal, and United are in complete control of the game from that moment. They score two in the second half. Rashford, and similar to the first goal, really cuts through the back line and finishes. And then a really nice move between Sancho and Fernandez to finish the game. We can then bring off Shaw, Fred, that you mentioned earlier. Fred playing better with better players. He's having a good run of form at the moment, so it makes sense to give him a bit of a rest, take Rashford off, give him a break. That's the opportunity to rest the players that we were talking about, like rather than from the start. United don't often, they've not often had that position, even in the good run, where they've been so handsomely in front that they can afford to sort of just take a few players off and see how the game. Um, And to be fair, Leicester have been hot and cold this season, like they often are under Brendan Rodgers. Any Brendan Rodgers side is like this. They'll have a really good run of form and a really bad run of form. It looked like they were heading into a good run of form because he scored 4 goals against Villa, 4 goals against Spurs. So really, yeah, all right, it's Leicester, but I think it was a really positive ticking over performance yesterday. Paul, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, you have to. I look at the Spurs one. I wasn't surprised they beat Spurs because Spurs were still living off beating City the game before.
Yeah,
But you're still a team that's going to score those goals. You have to be aware of them. And to be honest, if United had gone in at half time losing, people would have accepted it because United were poor in the first half.
yeah,
Leicester were better going forward than United, especially um, on the side where Garnacho and Luke Shaw were. It was a serious weakness when it was up against Tete and the Belgian boy Cass. I'll get there in the end anyway. But I'm going to say the right back. They was up against those two, and they struggled. And Garnacho just wasn't doing his defending side, and I don't think he didn't want to do it. I don't think he really knew what to do. His whole thing was about going forward, but he didn't, and he wasn't going forward with any conviction. So that was allowing the fullback to get the other side of him. And I just wonder how much Luke Shaw. Thank you, Ben. I didn't know. I wasn't sure how much Luke Shaw was helping him. I
yeah,
don't think Luke Shaw was talking to him, and I just think Luke Shaw. I could see he wasn't because Luke Shaw should have got him to stand on a touchline to stop the ball being rolled to Tete, who Luke was up against, and
yeah,
Luke couldn't deal with him. He was too quick, too clever for him. So to stop him being one against one, he should have got him to stand as close to the touchline so he couldn't roll it into his feet. So he wasn't communicating with him, so he's making the job more difficult. Luke Shaw early in that first half, decided he wanted to run forward, run inside. He didn't let the game settle, and United were never in control of that ball for him to do what he wanted to do. If Casemiro's playing, he can do that because he'll take the sting out of the game to
yeah,
allow Luke then to get back in position. But the game was too up and down. It allowed the game to be too open too quickly, and that's where they had their problem. And that's why Garnacho in the end come off. He
yeah,
had to bring him off in the end just to kind of to get someone there more experienced who weren't going to run around and not he just couldn't do off the ball. He wasn't getting Garnacho, and he's 18, and that all that comes into it. So I look at it that way, and I just saw we started off well, but lost it after 10 minutes. It went
yeah,
control of the ball, then it went. Then Leicester took over. David De Gea made 2 great saves. The second one, which he hooked back, was a fantastic save. Again, that was on the defending side of Dalot. Dalot doesn't seem to see the ball in the air. If he doesn't see the ball, he doesn't see the man. Twice the man's pulled off in his shoulder on the left side, Harvey Barnes,
yeah,
and he doesn't know he's there, Wayne. He's not aware at all of where he is. His whole body is looking at the opposite touchline. So that, and David De Gea has got United out of trouble twice, and they could have gone in 2-0 down, and it could have been more difficult. You just mentioned Fernandes. Fernandes had an awful first half, but like you say, if you look at stats, he'll look great. But if you watch the game, if you watch that first half, he was absolutely awful what he done. And the same you could talk about Weghorst. If you look at Weghorst's stats, all the little kids who are behind their computer would say he's rubbish. But if you watch him, and like you say about him, look, he's one of those players that would always be in contention for Player of the Year
yeah,
for what he does, did up and back, go here, go there, and going out and getting people in on loan is a difficult one. It's so difficult, and you don't know you don't know how they're going to be mentally. Especially if they know they're coming in, they know their parent club don't want them as such as kicked them out, and you hope you get their attitude. But for me, he's their attitude right. But for me, he's the person who's thinking, I'm lucky to be here. I want to be here next season. That's what he's saying, and you're not going to turn around, and we all know that he's not going to be Manchester United centre forward next season. He knows that. He's been asked to come in and do a job, and he could earn the right to to get a contract. You
Yeah.
know, because he doesn't want to go back to Burnley and play for Burnley. He doesn't want to go back to Turkey and play in Turkey. He wants to play for be at the biggest club in the world.
Yeah.
And and Ten Hag again has gone and brought someone in to do a job. If you're judging him on scoring goals, Ten Hag didn't get him to go and score 10, 15 goals. I think there's more to his game than scoring goals. Of
Yeah.
course, when you're in that position of being a number 9, everyone just talks about you scoring goals. But United and what Ten Hag wants to do, he needed someone to do that kind of ugly side of being a centre forward.
Yeah.
And what he had at that given time when he arrived, one of them didn't want to be fit, and the other one just wasn't the right fit at all. Couldn't do the job of playing as a centre forward. Couldn't do the job of when he wasn't in possession of the ball to do stuff for the team when he wasn't in possession of the ball. How many tackles does he win coming back and sliding and hooking the ball back off of people after he's lost it or if they've lost it? How many times do you do that? The only person I've seen, I can remember doing that on a regular basis, more of a regular basis than him, was Peter Beardsley. He
Yeah.
did it all the time for Liverpool back in the day. Him and Rush worked so hard, but
Yeah.
for me, he's been absolutely fantastic. If United didn't have him at the moment, they wouldn't be where they are. It wouldn't be where they are because then you'd be asking a Rashford to go and play now, or you'd be playing someone false. You know, I'm not even going to mention Martial because there's no point mentioning him. So
Yeah.
you're looking at Rashford and then playing someone in there who wouldn't know what to do, but they're just a body.
Yeah. It's an interesting one with Vegas. I'm not for 1 second comparing him in terms of quality, but when I look at him play and I look at what he brings to the team, I of think of how good Mark Hughes would be in this system.
Oh,
You know what I mean? He
great
fits
shout.
that kind of role perfectly,
Yeah,
and bringing other players into the game and still working hard for the ball and everything, and still having that nous of scoring important goals at important times. Having said that, like Ben says, credit to Ten Hag saying the first half performance was rubbish. The players shouldn't hide from that, and to be fair, they didn't. He obviously did say at half time because the first 20 minutes of the second half, we killed the game off, and really that's as good as you can expect. They were so clinical in scoring those 2 goals, and that was impressive, wasn't it?
it was. Certainly, it was it made the first goal made a difference, but the getting the second and that was it really. What I liked about the second half was that there was no pressure. They didn't even though they were comfortable, they still kept it right. They didn't go overboard. Fernandez stopped his silly flicks. All
Yeah,
those silly flicks he did, which are more. He did one when he ran over the ball, and you think so. You didn't even know what's behind you, but he stopped all that because that's what happened a lot in the first half. There was too many flicks everywhere. It was like virtually a case of we win the game whenever. Where before, no, you earn the right to win the game by
yeah,
by digging in. Doesn't matter who you are, you have to do that. And Leicester nearly took advantage of that fact because United thought they could win the game whenever they wanted to, and it couldn't have been that way. It was, couldn't have been that way unless they had done the hard work first. And Ten Hag, in certain ways, is a bit old school in that sense. He believes in that. Yes, he wants to play great football, but he does still know that you have to still earn the right to do that. And that second half performance from United should have been the performance in the first half. If
yeah,
they'd have started that way in the first half, been going in at half time, and he could have made his substitutions at half time because the game would have been won. Because the moment they scored that second, or the way they come out the second half, Leicester couldn't compete. They get that second goal, that's it, game over. They'd absolutely killed the game, but yet they still played with a purpose of control.
yeah,
Control was the key, and they had that the whole of that second half. And
yeah.
that's been very rare last few seasons. Never seen that because the midfield was so poor. They could not they could not control anything that was put in front of them.
It's scary to think of, like, the difference that 1 or 2 more additions could make to this side in terms of results like that. Yeah, like you said, like 3-0 against Leicester feels like a really emphatic result, and it was the kind of result back in the day you would have taken for granted. Certainly not now. Every small step feels like a giant one for United. As will and fairly enough this time, the Newcastle game next week, which is the League Cup final, Carabao final. So I'm trying to think of the different names. There was the Milk Cup, there was the Rumbelows Cup, which was the first one that you played in for United, right? There was a Coca-Cola Cup, Worthington Cup, Capital One Cup at one point, Carling Cup, Carabao Cup. I think it lost its sponsor for a year and was the Football League Cup, EFL Cup, or
Bob the
whatever.
Builder Cup.
Bob the Builder Cup. Yeah, it reminds me of, was it Tommy Docherty said it once, like, we'll win everything that we're in for, we'll even win the Grand National or something. It feels like this is the competition that just takes on any old name. I'm trying to think of the others. I know it started as the Milk, and I know United have basically won it at some point, or been in a final at least, where under every iteration of this, apart from maybe one or two of them. But definitely, the Rumbelows Cup was the one that was the one that in 1992, wasn't it, when we won it? When you won it for United, was the Rumbelows Cup. One little point before we talk about the final. Just got a comment from Ben. There might be nothing in this. What do you make of Ten Hag bringing Rashford off on a hat trick? My dad always thought Fergie did this to motivate strikers to score as soon as possible before he took them off. I just think it was a rest, but do you think that there might be a little psychological play in that, sort of speed him up? And I don't know, because Marcus has been so prolific lately. What do you make?
I mean, I was asked that question when I was doing the commentary of the game yesterday, and I asked, should he bring him off now? And given where United are at the moment, I think it was right to bring him off because saying that the job as a manager, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But say Marcus Rashford was so desperate to go and get a hat trick, he puts himself he sticks his head into a fire like that to go and do it, and he gets burnt. Everyone be saying, why didn't he take him off? He's got two, the game was won.
Yeah.
So he's just gone and done it. And to be honest, I would agree that normally I'm one of them saying, no, let him score a hat trick. Well, why? the team's won a game. Come off. There's a bigger game. There's a big game coming up next weekend. That's what you should be looking forward to, is walking out to play in the final for Manchester United at Wembley. So regardless of what it is, it's a cup final. It's big. United don't win it, but it's going to be big story everywhere, and all of a sudden that tournament is like massive.
Yeah.
It's not a small thing. If you're Manchester United at the moment and you want to start something again, you go and win something first. You win it, and then you bounce off the back of it. That's what you go and do. It's as simple as that. So he's looking at that game. And he's thinking that game, he's thinking a game on Thursday. It's important to have the person who is getting you through situations at this moment in time available to play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that would have definitely been Ten Hag's school of thought with that. I want to ask you about that before. I know we're going to talk about Newcastle in general, but the concept of being there when United have been in the doldrums a little bit, and then you come up to a League Cup final, which was obviously your first trophy for the club. I know United were on a bit of an upwards trajectory at that point. They'd won the FA Cup, which was the catalyst, and then they won the Cup Winners' Cup and the Super Cup. But for a group of you in the squad, I think Kanchelskis was in the squad, Schmeichel's first trophy as well. So there were two or three of you who it was your first trophy. For Giggs' first trophy as well. The first domestic trophy, I think he played in the Super Cup, or he was on the bench in the Super Cup. First domestic trophy. So is it going to have that kind of impact for the players? I mean, we're speaking hypothetically if they win it. I mean, I don't want to do that because I don't want to jinx it. But approaching the final, is it big for that reason? Obviously, big for the reason of winning a trophy, but bigger for the sort of stature of the club. I'm not putting United above Newcastle with that. I'm just kind of saying, because it's United, because of the pressure that they've been under for the last decade, now it feels a little bit different to the other cup finals. It feels like the first step on the way to something, rather than like an endurance test to get there.
I 100% get what you're saying there, Wayne. And yeah, I think you are right thinking that way. I believe that a lot of the fans are seeing this as not as thank God, at least we're winning something. They're seeing this as a beginning, as something to add on to all the bits that they believe are going to follow after.
Yeah,
This is more than just a building block. That building block, there's a lot more. And this one's got an easy bit where this one's a bit easy because you can build a good foundation from something like this by what they've seen happen over these last few months of what he's done, what Ten Hag has done with the football club and with the football team. And that's the thing about it. It actually feels like it's almost like it's a football club again, even though they haven't put it back on the badge yet.
yeah,
Um, it still feels like there's a football club there at this moment in time. It feels like it's a team, and there's a lot of players there who want to win that because they go and win they go and win that trophy this season, and if it's the only trophy they win and they qualify for the Champions League, people will talk about it,
yeah,
and they'll be talked about. They'll be able to walk about, and they can actually really, in theory, even though some of them might be too shallow about it, they can actually look people in the face of players and say they've done well. They've come back. They've done well to come back from where they were, even though it's still
yeah,
Manchester United and they're being talked about and they're near the top. There still wasn't a lot to talk about and what they've done. They never looked like it was going to do anything. There was little bits but now it looks like there's something that's going to be built on here, in my opinion. Yes, it's always going to be difficult because you're Manchester United. When you're in this position now, everyone raises their game, Wayne. Now everybody wants to beat Manchester United, and that's how it should be. That's what I learned when I got there. Suddenly, everything changed. The games when you played against other teams, say you played against a Wimbledon, a Coventry, great. When you played against them at QPR, fine. When you played against them as a Manchester United player, there was a difference. You react differently to the bigger sides.
yeah,
And yet, in the way United, I was always a big game. Always, doesn't matter who you are, always playing. You want to beat them. So those players are up starting now. Some of them have got a better picture of what things are really about. When they go away to grounds, and they, even though United have got the best fans that travel, there's a difference in them the way they're feeling because they're not got crossed fingers when they walk to the ground. They honestly believe that they're going to go there and they're going to win.
yeah, yeah. It's an interesting, yeah, sort of change in feeling. I don't know if I'm confident about winning, but I'm confident about seeing good performances from the team. Or I'm more hopeful of that. I think winning, I'm too scarred by the events of the last decade to take any result for granted, and I think that's the frame of mind that I'm definitely in for the Newcastle game because Newcastle under Eddie Howe, they've been spoilers, as they're sort of building their own foundations for what's obviously going to be some kind of successful period for them in terms of we don't even know what that's going to represent, how it's going to look, but it's definitely going to be more successful than the previous sort of 2 decades from when they were last challenging for the title in the mid 90s. Because of the money that they've got there, they're going to have some kind of success, however that looks. And at the moment where they're building that, they look resolute. They look horrible to play against. They're defensively strong and they're organised. The goalkeeper's going to be suspended, Pope, and I can tell you from the experience of watching him at Old Trafford, he's one of the most unpopular goalkeepers because of the amount of time that he takes, but that's part of Newcastle's approach. So, yes, you're going to lose Pope, and yes, Dubravka can't play, but Loris Karius, who was going to come in, everyone's going to remember what he did in the Champions League final for Liverpool. He's going to remember that. His entire composition of a goalkeeper is going to be like bringing in a completely different character because he's got this swan song of his career that's going to be represented in a single game, and he's going to be probably singing from the Pope hymn sheet, probably taking 10 seconds longer at goal kicks, doing everything he can to make it even worse because that's what Eddie Howe will be telling him to do, make yourself a character in the game. So I don't really necessarily think they're going to be that weakened by the suspension. I just think it'll heighten the way that Newcastle play anyway. They're going to be there to win that trophy in probably the most ugly way they can because they know that that's going to be the way to stop it for United. They're not bothered in a spectacle, they're bothered in the trophy, which is different from the Bobby Robson and Kevin Keegan days. And it'll make it an interesting composition, won't it, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, the long and short of it, really, all it is really, Newcastle are just Bournemouth, but with more established players.
Yeah.
Everything is the same. You let Bournemouth go 1-0 up against you, you've got a massive problem under Eddie Howe. Newcastle is exactly the same, no different. I've seen them too many times this season live, gone to games, and every time I'm just there frustrated, just wondering how players can want to play like this, to be honest. I really don't understand it. I don't think you would never see a Manchester United team play like that, because I think the manager coming in knows it would never be allowed. It would never be allowed to play like that, and I think it's a horrible way to play. I don't get it. And then all of a sudden you go 1-0 down, or sorry, the team scores or you go behind. All of a sudden you want to do things quicker.
Yeah,
It doesn't make any sense. You look at Aston Villa. Everything they were doing
yeah,
against Arsenal, Martinez,
yeah,
slow, this and that. All of a sudden they go behind, and he wants to do everything quick, and you think to yourself, what's the logic? What is the logic in that?
yeah,
And it doesn't. I really don't understand it. Really, what football's becoming now? What teams think they have got to do to play football? Go out there, enjoy it. But I just don't see how someone can just go, well, I want you to take your time there. When the ball goes out for a throw in, get the ball and let it hit your chest and fall on the floor and make out you dropped it and do that. And I really don't. Yes, there is times, and there was a bit of gamesmanship, but now it's gone beyond it. Now it's gone beyond. I won't even get into my pet hate now in football, but yes, it's unenjoyable. It's meant to be a spectacle. Football's meant to be entertainment for people who pay a lot of money, and it's going to be a lot of money spent. You think on the travelling costs of both teams, what's that going to cost? And you're paying people travelling from Newcastle, giving up so much time, maybe some of them losing a day's work as well because of the following day,
yeah,
and they're going to watch their team almost, the way they start trying to kill time and not give them something to smile about.
yeah. What do you make? I mean, obviously, Pope. Do you reckon that's going to be a miss, or do you like I've just said about Karius there that he's going to be built into this kind of? Obviously, he's going to be a pivotal character in the final, and he'll be sort of playing up to that. Eddie Howe,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's almost like a man management episode in
yeah,
what Howe will be doing, rather than what Karius brings to the table. It'll be like what Howe tells him to do, right?
yeah, exactly right. And they will miss Pope and the fact of he's a good shot stopper.
Yeah,
He's been excellent for them. He's the reason why they've had, clean sheets and everything. It's about him really. And you've seen a little bit of Newcastle. There's been this buzz about him, and the fans have made it. There's this kind of, we're owed something. Um, but when you do watch them, you suddenly realise there isn't a lot there. And if you can get that first goal, then
yeah,
it makes a big difference in their approach, a big difference in the way they play. So there's a golden opportunity, and for United to go and achieve something, quite early on. And I just think if they can go and, again, give us all a good week,
yeah,
Thursday and on the Sunday, and then the bounce off from that would be fantastic to go and get something under their belt
yeah.
so early in the season.
It is crazy to think that it is a week of um, I don't know. It's not I'm going to say make or break the season, but if United get a good result on Thursday and they win on Sunday, then the season's already an unqualified success, isn't it?
Mm,
I know, yeah, people will say about the Champions League position, and I don't want to take that for granted, but we're in such a strong position in the league now that, I mean, in sort of comparison, no, sorry, in combination with winning the League Cup and sort of this epic tie with Barcelona, then it does, like you said earlier, everything else from that point would be a bonus, wouldn't it?
yeah, without a doubt. All you're looking for at the moment in time, you would say, is just the next two games, two wins.
Yeah,
But that's all you're looking for, two wins, and then see what happens after. That's the bit. It's the bit after that matters. How players react to what happens after these next two games. The biggest, two big games. Yes, it's a qualifying game for the next stage, the Barcelona one, but to beat Barcelona at Old Trafford
yeah,
and then to go into the game on Sunday, that's the kind of position that Sir Alex Ferguson would want to be in. He'd want. You got a big game, you react to it by a performance and a win, then to go into the next big game, and the next big game is only a few days later at Wembley.
yeah,
Absolutely perfect.
yeah. Barcelona at Old Trafford and a Wembley Cup final. Ben says it's
Yeah,
the biggest week of the season so far, for sure. But when you've got a run of games like that, it's also one of the biggest weeks in the club's history as well. And I'm not
yeah,
taking that. I'm not saying that lightly. You just don't get that combination very often. So sink, you know, let it sink in. soak it up, enjoy it for what it is, because at least United are going to approach it trying to play the right way. And Ten Hag is really positive at the moment. You're gonna, I'm not banking on Rashford scoring, winning goals in these games, but when you've got a player playing like he's doing, then you feel like there's a lot of hope there. We will be back next week to talk about that week, and hopefully as positive as we feel this week as well. If you've been watching live on YouTube or Facebook, get your comments and questions in after on the replay, because we still do reply to them on the replay. If you're listening back on the audio podcast, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review on the platform you're listening on. We will be back next week to talk about those games. Stay safe, stay well, and thanks for listening.